Hello, I'm David Templeton, and I am testing the equipment. Pre-reading. I'm going to do a reading, but it would help if you heard me and could see me. That's Andy. He's going to make sure that he can see and hear me before the reading begins. Do we seem to be functional? Andy.
I don't have the answer yet.
Let's hope someone's out there. I'll be right back.
I got it now.
It is 12:58. I am going to be reading this. Was that a confirmation, Andy, that
I said, yes, I can
you
hear
can hear it? That's good.
I can hear every little sound you make. So don't tap the things.
I'll be right back. Checking out my jigsaw puzzle. Monster seemed appropriate. It's a monster taking a selfie. Some really hard jigsaw puzzle. It is 1 p.m. Ready for a scary story? I'm very happy to be reading the entire sequel to Algae Gator, which was originally published last year, and a sequel now has grown out of the ooze of Dale's mind. So I read that last year and had a good time, and I was asked to read the sequel. So we're doing it this way on YouTube. I hope you enjoy. You ready? Algae Gator 2, Paligator, The Palace of Fine Arts Monster by Dale Swimmer. For years, the global pandemic billowed across the globe, pulling social customs and revered institutions down into its wake. Officials issued instructions that individuals were to stay inside, keep away from others, and see only those who lived in the same household together. People stayed inside much of the time together, giving fresh resonance to Jean-Paul Sartre's Huis Clos. My apologies. Hell is other people. It was a benefit for the natural world as more birds were observed and exotic animals appeared in unusual places. For some individuals, the pandemic brought a kind of freedom that comes when no one is watching. In San Francisco, the town's social integrity drifted apart as schools and offices closed. Family reunions were indefinitely postponed. Brides canceled their weddings, though some eloped. Hugs and handshakes were discouraged. High school seniors were still virgins. One unseasonably hot July, time spent outdoors and away from others was just about the only respite from the relentlessness of living every hour at home together. That August, the fires started. Hot winds crashed power lines to the ground. Lightning hit the earth, sparking dry timber. Northern California ignited. Smoke and ash filled the air, changing the color of the sky from blue to orange. The sun turned red and the full moon yellow. Idle chit-chat about the weather was subsumed by ardent discussions about the air quality index. San Francisco's smoky skies were considered hazardous for 351 consecutive days. Spare the air alerts became permanent. It was a health hazard for the sick, elderly, and very young to be outside. The regular ebb and flow of San Francisco moved instead in halts and starts. Even the pets were confused. Day 1. Marina District, San Francisco. Mindy Day, MD, wakes up in her apartment on North Point Street in the Marina District of San Francisco. She can see the Palace of Fine Arts from her living room window and the Golden Gate Bridge from her rooftop. As she warms to the day, Mindy meditates and gives herself a gentle caress. Outside her window, she hears the garbage and recycling trucks, leaf blowers, electric city buses, and crows. She feels the exploratory and creative frisson that she used to whenever she hopped into town as a teenager in Berkeley. Mindy's best friend Colette calls her, as she does nearly every day. "Hey girl," Colette issues her standard greeting. "Hello, gorgeous," replies Mindy, channeling the poster she saw in the Benefit Cosmetics window on Chestnut Street. Mindy hears Colette's shrill, clear voice and can almost see the space between her two front teeth. When they turned 21, in a tipsy commemoration of their friendship, Mindy and Colette had gone upstairs to Lyle Tuttle's tattoo shop in North Beach, each left with a Ring of Fire tattoo around her middle finger. "What are you doing?" Mindy asks, looking at the finely drawn flames on her middle finger. "At my boyfriend's place. I'll call you later." "Okay," Mindy concurs. Due to pandemic safety precautions and the toxic air from the fires, people and their pets stay at home. The pets are happy in general. The humans are bored. Colette stays with her boyfriend, Fred, and his white bunny, Cokie. For something to do, Fred occasionally smokes weed and blows the smoke into little Cokie's ears. Fred thinks it is funny. Colette is not sure it's a good idea. Cokie twitches his ears, but does not seem to mind. Children are less playful with their captive animals. Permanently homeschooled and their lessons taught over computers, children's science class presented real challenges. Promising young students learned biology during the virtual frog dissection, but no one monitored the students' lab work. Dr. Mindy Day is a recent graduate medical school and an alumna of pandemic homeschooling. A synthesized growth hormone with molecular properties that resemble steroids and methamphetamine. This newly minted, remotely educated medical doctor has run experiments on her pet hamsters, dogs, cats, lizards, and fish during formative years. As part of this budding young scientist homeschool projects, including some DIY experiments that went rogue. Her family's four-legged pets were routinely injected with various substrates. The reptiles fared better than the mammals. Nearby Mindy's place lives an unhoused ruffian known as Jelly Carlisle. Like most mornings, he is passed out in a dirt patch outside the condemned Bridge Hotel on Lombard Street. It is now illegally occupied by the homeless and mentally ill. He is awakened when a junkie from the derelict hotel stumbles over him. Jelly feels around for his shoes. He opens his eyes, crusty from smoke, ash, and Jelly's eye goo, or as he calls it, Jelly's jelly. He rolls a largest chunk out from the corner of his eye and eats it. Then, like every other day, he ambles over to the manicured hedges bordering the mansion of Peter Thiel, the morally bankrupt venture capitalist, and takes a crap. He then crosses the street to wash his face and hands in the lagoon at the Palace of Fine Arts. Completing his morning routine, Jelly walks to Walgreens, chooses his spot on the sidewalk outside the store, and tries to scare up a bit of cash from the rich marina ladies and tech bros. They generally ignore or trip over him while on their phones. Sometimes they will part with their easily earned money and throw old Jelly a few coins. Spare something for something? Jelly rolls the words out from the back of his head, his question barely formulated. Here you go. A marina brunette cautiously thrust $1 at him. Sometimes his routine works. Seacliff, San Francisco. Next to Mindy's apartment at North Point and Divisadero Street, spanning through the Golden Gate National Park, is the Tennessee Watershed. It is a regulated water pathway that has been drained, dredged, filled in, yet still flows. It nestles against the concrete barriers of the Seacliff neighborhood, known for its stunning views of the Golden Gate Bridge and wealthy residents. Before the pandemic and fire, when schools were still open, the local zoo brought baby animals into classrooms for educational show and tell events with the students. They brought a baby Virginia possum, 2 Sierra Nevada red fox kits, 3 tiny California red garter snakes, a western painted turtle, a baby American alligator, and varieties of birds to the neighborhood schools. On the third outing of the day, and the last one before the weekend, the baby animals visited the 5th grade class at St. Ignatius College Preparatory School. While the possum was on display and the little girls were asking if they could pet it, the fire alarm rang. Everyone jumped, even the baby possum. The teacher hurried everyone out of the room. On the way, an unscrupulous preteen boy named Roger slipped his hand into the mobile aquarium, put his chubby fingers around the baby alligator, and stuffed it into the jacket pocket of his uniform. The fire alarm turned out to be a fire in the gymnasium. St. Ignatius closed for the afternoon. Nannies, mommies, divorced dads, and personal assistants were dispatched to pick up the scions. School was soon closed permanently. That afternoon, a baby alligator is released from the lint-filled and candy-coated pocket of a third-generation SI student. It takes up residency in a Seacliff neoclassical mansion recently featured in Architectural Digest. At Rogers Manse, the family quarantined in different quadrants. While this familial arrangement was suitable for the pandemic, they rarely saw each other. The little alligator lived quietly underneath the chubby-fingered boy's bed. Young Roger tried to keep it small, like a bonsai. He tried not feeding it much and squeezing the reptile into its mobile aquarium with a heavy book placed on top. The alligator continued to grow. Left with little choice, Roger moved his captured pet into a rarely used bathroom in his house. It worked for a while. The Honduran housekeepers kept his secret and cleaned around that powder room. One afternoon, just after the fire started, Roger's mother, the lovely matron of this Seacliff residence, feels something in her eye, like a piece of glass or a wood chip. Her eyes tear up and she rushes to the nearest bathroom sink to wash out the irritant. She reaches for the golden door handle, opens the door, and lunges toward the Carrara marble sink to flush her eye with warm water. In the mirror, she sees a 6-foot alligator in the Le Cobb bathtub behind her, in quiet repose, tail resting on the travertine floor. "What the H-E double toothpicks," the lady of the house politely screams at her staff. "Get it out of here," she shouts to the nearest one. "It better be gone," she whispers loudly, "before I come home." She grabs a cold compress for her eye, takes the car keys off the table, backs her Mercedes Maybach GLS out of the garage, and drives to the club to calm her nerves. The Honduran housekeepers and Guatemalan gardeners exchange glances. They devise a plan to capture the beast without risk to life or limb. They take a souvenir macrame air chair hanging in the downstairs lanai and cut it down. The housekeepers line the chair with towels. The gardeners bring up a gurney from the garage, last used when the mister of the house had a sudden back seizure and was taken in his private ambulance to his doctor. Carefully and quickly, the staff wrapped the toweled air chair around the alligator's gaping jaws, cinched the rope around the alligator's head, and tie it up to the shower head to avoid being bitten. They take the gurney, unfasten the straps, and slide it under the reptile. They roll him onto the gurney, refasten the straps around his hide, unhook him from the shower head with the air chair still firmly around his neck, and transport the alligator to the backyard. At the back of the Seacliff property, the staff release him into the creek. They say a prayer and run back to the house to resume their domestic duties. "Ciao, Pascal." "See you later, alligator." Day 2, Marina District. In the marina near Mindy's place, and part of the Tennessee watershed, is the lagoon at the Palace of Fine Arts, a charismatic water feature. This tidal estuary was once a wetland area where salt water from the San Francisco Bay met fresh water from El Pollan Spring and the Tennessee Hollow Creek. In 1915, under the direction of Bernard Maybeck for the Pan-Pacific International Exposition, the lagoon was carved away from the San Francisco Bay. Mule labor filled in the marshlands. Now there are new lagoon residents. Originally from Guerneville in Northern California, a boisterous trio of monstrous hatchlings had arrived. Born in the Russian River, they are the 3 terrible spawn of Gator, an alligator mutated and made vicious from toxic chemicals spilled into the river. These mutant baby beasts chase each other, gobble fish, and snack on water birds as they careen towards the San Francisco Bay. They whoosh through various waterways and backyards, and their sojourn completes near the Palace of Fine Arts Lagoon. In the dark, brackish water of the adjacent Crissy Marsh, the mutant siblings grow and thrive, briefly reducing the long-billed curlew and willet populations. One early morning at 4:30 a.m., the coldest time of the day, Mindy cannot sleep. Earlier, she reads on Nextdoor.com, the chatty and salacious social media cesspool, that an alligator has washed up on Marshall Beach. Insomnia, scientific curiosity, and Jimmy legs propel her outside. Having recently released an enormous bearded lizard in Chinatown, Dr. Day is emboldened and optimistic about her synthetic growth hormone compound. Mindy decides to further her experiment on this newly arrived reptile. She spikes the serum with items from her purse and bathroom cabinet, adding birth control pills, amoxicillin, bleach, Tide Pods, tobacco, hydrogen peroxide, vape cartridge goo, Sudafed, and gel hand sanitizer into the mix. The scientist takes her new batch of growth serum, primes an old syringe, and walks to nearby Marshall Beach. On the beach, that wet and chilly morning, a stray dog wanders by Mindy. She coaxes it to her. She removes the belt from her Burberry trench coat, wraps it around the abandoned pup, and ties the pooch to a stake in the sand near the reptile. Mindy sits quietly on a nearby sand dune and waits. The alligator approaches the whimpering, tethered treat. The scientist jabs the syringe filled with modified growth hormone into its steely hide. Like a vacuum-packed foam animal that expands when water is added, the alligator mutates and grows 3 times its size. It leaves the dog alone, glares at Mindy as it passes by, and skulks into the water towards the bay. Mindy is elated and runs home. Day 3. Marina District, Palace of Fine Arts, Lagoon. On this sunny day, the 3 juvenile algae gators meet the mutated San Franciscan alligator. The brackish waters and gentle tidal areas of the land-filled Palace Lagoon and Crissy Marsh make for easy conditions for them to find common footing. All is well. The trio is intrigued by the newcomer, especially the sister among the 3 offspring. The mutants have a grand day at the Palace Lagoon. Hidden in the foliage, they start the day with a light snack of American coots and use the coots' blue feet to pick remnants out of their ferocious fangs. This fearsome foursome cruise in the water, sun themselves on the shores of the lagoon, and snack on California gulls and bandtail pigeons. They leave the whooper swans alone. Around noon, people descend on the Palace Park for formal photo opportunities. Betrothed couples, often with a baby, are accompanied by a photographer, lighting person, and a friend or relative holding the bride's shoes. Nearby, quinceañera maidens that look like cupcakes in candy-colored dresses fan their hair and pose for their photos. Unnoticed in the background of the portraits, the juvenile algae gators and their mutated new friend frolic in the Palace Lagoon. When the photographers develop the photos, glimpses of these exotic creatures could be perceived, reminding some of the Loch Ness Monster and Sasquatch mythos. That night, the female algae gator offspring from the Russian River and her new friend, the San Francisco mutated alligator monster, spend a romantic night together. They romp on the shores of the Crissy Marsh, snack on curious cats, and surprise pandemic puppies that have grown and been released into the wild. The 2 mutant reptiles watch the falling fire ash in the yellow full moon over the Golden Gate Bridge, their tails entwined in a heart-shaped embrace. They share a long holographic ribbon left over from a toddler's birthday party, just like the spaghetti noodle scene in Lady and the Tramp. As the dawn's gentle fingers cast an early light, the reptilian lovebirds return to their respective lairs. The lady gator builds a nest safely hidden along the water's edge and deposits her eggs. What happens in the San Francisco moonlight stays in San Francisco. Day 4, Marina District, the Palace Lagoon. Early in the morning, the hungry mutated alligator ventures alone to the Palace Lagoon. Even though fish and fowl are abundant, he misses the Chateaubriand he was pole-fed at the Seacliff residence. Along the way, he munches on items discarded by careless humans, including baby shoes, disposable face masks, crinkled empty bags of Takis, Fritos, cannabis-infused gummies, and Swisher sweets. At the same time, Jelly Carlisle finishes his morning constitution in Peter Thiel's hedges. Now at the Palace Lagoon, Jelly leans over at a acanthus plant to wash his hands and face in the water. Suddenly, 2 enormous sets of jaws engulf his body and wrestle him into the pond. Jelly's rolls of flesh squirt between the horrific teeth as they descend under the water. Soon after, the mutated palace alligator, Paligator, slithers back to the Crissy Marsh to rest in the shade. Just after sunset, the mutants start moving about. Even though they are within spitting distance, a measurement rarely used during the pandemic, of dog walkers, tourists, bicyclists, parents, children, and pet owners covered in face shields, masks, respirators, and sunglasses, they remain unseen. As darkness sets in, the two male Algae Gator siblings start sniffing around their new city friend, prompting a heated confrontation. Paligator is pumped from eating a human, the taste of sinews and energy fresh in his reptilian brain. He is not holding back. It is a battle royale. The three males roar, thrash, and gnash at each other's flesh. In a flash, the smallest of the Algae Gator trio is slain by a fatal bite to his carotid artery. The other male Algae Gator emerges wounded, pus-colored blood dripping from his neck and face. The female sibling pulls her brother to safety. The two Algae Gator siblings depart that evening. They dine on western grebes and California sea lions under Torpedo Pier. They knock over rock cairns at the edge of the beach with a swish of their mighty tails. This pair of mutants spawn from the Russian River pass under the Golden Gate Bridge and follow the pelicans to sunnier, more southern locales. Nearby, on North Point Street, Mindy is revving up for her evening, buoyed by successful results of her growth hormone experiment on the alligator. She feels a tiny twinge of concern for the mutant alligator. Its harmed whereabouts unknown. Nextdoor.com's obsessive neighborhood scolds have not reported any sightings yet. Dr. Day laughs as she thinks to herself, if only I could publish the clear results of these experiments, but the ethics boards are not likely to approve the methodology. Sliding into her Balenciaga boots, Mindy takes a victory lap around her neighborhood. The pandemic and fires have put a crashing end to the crowded bars, rounds of shots, and terrible sing-alongs by drunken patrons. While the nightly casual hookups were greatly reduced in the Marina District, it was still possible. Tonight, Mindy joins the scrum on Chestnut Street on her way to Robber Baron to see Lucretia, the fun and mischievous bar owner. Despite the deadly virus and fires, and reminiscent of the revelers in The Mask of the Red Death, the sidewalks are filled with diners perched at outdoor tables and in parking spaces, now transformed into parklets. Waiters deftly maneuver across the sidewalk's axis. The flow of walking traffic is slowed by toddling pregnant ladies clutching their children's squishy hands, elderly stalwarts shuffling by with their canes and walkers, leashed dogs that greet and fight each other, unhoused locals, bewildered tourists, and weaving drunks fill the narrow passageway, increasing the risk of infection. Squeezing through the crowd, Mindy passes Cultivar, the nearest wine bar to her apartment. She sees a friend of the owner sitting alone at a table. Hey, Oliver. She stops and lingers. Hi, Mindy. Join me for a glass, Oliver asks, gesturing to the wine bottle on his table and the seat next to him in the parklet. Okay. Mindy settles in for a glass of Syrah. After a few more glasses, they stumble to her place, bodily singing Que Sera, Sera through the streets. At her apartment, they enjoy a fun stint of rambunctious carnal conduct. Oliver leaves shortly thereafter. Mindy completes her victory lap, feeling like she has had a workout and a massage, and drifts off to sleep. Around the same time, at 11:11 p.m., Mike Beal, the co-proprietor of the Patio Wine Bar, walks to the Palace of Fine Arts to test out his new Hasselblad H5D 200C medium format DSLR camera. His loving girlfriend, Valeria, has gone home after a long day. It is tiring to explain to customers the new daily rules for restaurants during the pandemic and to handle the entitled Marina clientele's terrible blowback. Finally, off work, he puts on his favorite Cleveland Cavaliers fan wear emblazoned with his moniker Beelzebub on the back of the wine and gold team jersey. Mike sits on the tree stump at the edge of the palace lagoon as the waning gibbous moon rises above the palace ruins. He adjusts his camera, points and shoots at the palace dome. The flash sets off a response from the water. Suddenly, the remaining mutated alligator rises out of the water and swallows Mike in one ferocious bite. Mike's camera is thrown to the ground as the rest of him descends into the darkness behind the cruel fangs of the fine monster from the Palace Lagoon. Excuse me. Day 5, Marina District. At 9:07 a.m., Mindy wakes with the red sun on her lightly dressed body. She feels like stretching her legs. Humming the Velvet Underground song, Cool It Down, she grabs her Nike Tangens for a walk to Fort Point at the base of the Golden Gate Bridge. Outside, Mindy gingerly picks her way through the broken window glass from the burglarized cars parked on the street. The street seems to be paved with diamonds on this bright morning. She breezes by the quiet Palace of Fine Arts Lagoon. Mindy gazes in the lagoon, where the black-crowned night herons slumber in their day roost and the red-eared slider turtles sun themselves, until her reverie is disturbed. She sees a man stealing the Muscovy ducks that live in the palace waters. Though foie gras and duck liver pate were banned in California, the law was recently rescinded. The duck thief forces the first duck into a metal mobile cage. "Stop it!" Mindy screams. She runs toward them to try to save the birds. Just as the intruder grabs the neck of the second duck, a set of 10-inch fangs framed in the mouth of a mutated alligator emerge from the water, engulf the man, ducks, and chicken wire pen, pulling them beneath the water. "WTF!" Mindy gasps, stopping in her tracks, her Nike Tangens screeching on the pavement near the sign describing the Palace Lagoon waterfowl. The water is calm. The ring-necked ducks float by, the great blue herons, double-crested cormorants, and roosting night herons. Mindy scans the water for the beast. She feels a rumble below her feet, where the Palace Lagoon water flows under the man-made terrain towards the bay. The cement sidewalk cracks, and water rushes at her feet, and from the deep, Paligator rises out of the water, bares his hideous pearly white teeth, and lunges forward to envelop Mindy's entire form. Mindy beholds this moment of enlightenment. All the late-night sci-fi and monster films she and her college roommate watched reel through her mind, grasping the significance like the inventors in Frankenstein's Monster and 2001: A Space Odyssey. Dr. Mindy Day, MD, comprehends that the monster she created will kill her. "I sure am glad I had sex last night," Mindy says to herself as she is dragged to her death into the water, her body squishing through Paligator's enormous teeth, like a stream of soda pop through a gap-toothed girl's grin. Later that morning, Valeria is at the Palace of Fine Arts Lagoon, where Mike had texted her from the night before. He had not returned home. She finds his camera and a torn piece of his Cavs jersey near the tree stump. Valeria replays the footage recorded in Mike's camera. She sees incomprehensible pictures of giant teeth with turtle heads stuck in between them. Valeria reviews the footage as 7-year-old Sophia and her dad Adam come from a picnic at Crissy Field. They pass by Valeria, and inquisitive Sophia peers over Valeria's shoulder at the images in the camera. She spies the teeth. Asks, "Tata, is Algae Gator here?" "I don't know." Tries to steady his voice as he recognizes the horror. "Sophia, let's go." Valeria takes the camera and goes to Northern Station Police Station. She files a missing persons report in which she has recovered. Across the lawn, an adorable Norwich Terrier puppy learns to play fetch. "Good dog, good Duke, fetch." His owner lobs a ball. The little pup almost catches it in his mouth. Duke barks his cute puppy bark and scurries under the daylilies to recapture his play toy. The puppy is out of sight for a moment. "Duke, Dookie, Dookie, his owner calls to him. Little Duke emerges from the foliage and scampers over. In his little puppy teeth, he drags a severed hand with a ring of fire tattoo on the middle finger. Nearby, Mrs. Megan McCarthy, a recent widow and volunteer with the Golden Gate National Park, sets out to Crissy Field Marsh to pick up trash and cut down invasive plant species. In her high yellow wading boots and matching yellow gloves, she leans over to lop off a yellow star thistle. There is a rustling behind her. What she mistook for a log pounces on her and swallows the widow McCarthy in one huge gulp, the yellow star thistle still in her hand. Soon after, another volunteer, A.U. I can't pronounce that. Zhaoji? A.U. Or Lily, as the Guizi Westerner. She does not find the widow. Instead, a set of blazing red reptilian eyes staring at her from beneath the foliage on the marsh shoreline. She backs away abruptly. Ayu is familiar with the Chinese dragon. She is from the Anthui province along the Yangtze River, the last place where the nearly extinct alligator resides. She backs away. Ayu runs to find a park ranger to share what she's seen. The word is out. The scabs on nextdoor.com post haughty opinions about the Palace of Fine Arts alligator and nickname it Paligator. Mrs. Terry Norman posts an emphatic missive on the noxious site stating that monsters should not be permitted in the Marina District. Many agree. The park police officers, National Park Services representatives, and Presidio Trust aristocrats convene. The Presidio Trust is a of overly entitled, greedy, wealthy real estate developers and scions of old San Francisco money. They are known as the Presidio Mistrust for their selfish commercial interests and selling much of the national park to private corporations like LucasArts and the Walt Disney Company. To protect their real estate interests, the Mistrust insists that there is to be no damage to buildings or landscaping. The artist Damien Hirsch has already contacted the committee with plans to encapsulate the Paligator in a formaldehyde tank for his new art piece. A strange old professor from the Academy of Sciences archives also requests some Paligator DNA samples, ostensibly to study them. Orders conveyed, it is time to locate the beast. It was essential to keep the monster on land. If he escapes into the water, Paligator has 1,800 miles of sewage, treated water, and rainwater runoff tunnels to hide in, including one large pipe that leads directly out to the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, at Fred and Koki's house, Colette calls Mindy, but Mindy does not answer her phone. She has not returned Colette's text or liked her Instagram post from the previous day when Colette posted with a random alligator on Marshall Beach. She wonders if Mindy is cross with her as she gazes at her Ring of Fire tattoo. Colette calls her Joe Nathan, a maintenance worker with the Golden Gate National Park, to exchange Paligator gossip. Like Colette and Mindy, Joe Nathan is also a hazardous product of online education. A precocious youngster, though inattentive student, Joe Nathan excelled in science. Unlike Mindy and her pets, he was not allowed to practice science experiments on Foz, the family's Maine Coon house cat. Instead, he built robotic animals made from toys and electronics found at Goodwill, Radio Shack, flea markets, and garage sales. While much of Joe Nathan's youthful energy was spent making these misfit animals ambulate, late at night, Joe Nathan tinkered with pyrotechnics and explosives, sending his mechanical creatures in multiple trajectories. Colette, meet me at my place. I have a plan, Joe Nathan tells his sister. She hears the excitement in his voice. I'm already in an Uber. I'll be there in 10 minutes, Colette replies. Joe Nathan unlocks the door to his garden shed. He reviews his inventory of combustible consumables and robotic creations. He considers his sealed canisters of potassium chlorate, ground aluminum powder, sulfuric acid, ammonium salts, and aluminum nitrate, recently purchased online from the questionable distributor Lab Alley and now discreetly hidden in empty flower pots. On the shelves, arranged in neat rows, are containers of gasoline, kerosene, butane, liquid bandage, nail polish remover, toy gun caps, multiple Christmas crackers that contain a fuse and a whisper of black powder, road flares, phosphorus, Roundup weed killer, and Miracle Grow plant food. He pushes aside the haphazardly strewn remote controllers, lithium batteries, robot dog parts, quadcopter drones, cameras, sensors, and microphone arrays on his workbench to make room to concoct explosive bait. He takes a working robotic dog, names it Sparky, and wraps it in sewn-together Beanie Babies. He stuffs Sparky with 2 cans of wet cat food and a small glass container of potassium chlorate and 5-micron aluminum powder evenly mixed together. He adds a light bulb filament tied to one side of a Christmas cracker and loops fishing line around the other side. He zip ties some lithium batteries, cameras, microphones, and sensors to the puppy's plush coat. The remote controller suggests in the pup's blue LED eyes. Sparky, the robotic psychotic dog, a patchwork pelt of fluffy animal heads and bodies, is ready for battle. Joe Nathan makes 6 more. Colette arrives. They pack up the explosive puppies and assorted armaments into his modified electric yellow go-car. On their way to the park, Joe Nathan grabs some propane tanks from the restaurant's parklet heaters for additional fuel. The police set up a trap for Paligator at the Palace Lagoon. They clear the area around the Palace of Fine Arts, Crissy Field, Fort Point, and Chestnut Street. The Parks and Recs crew cover the lagoon with steel mesh hammered into the surrounding lawn to block access to Crissy Marsh and the Pacific Ocean. They open valves to lower the water level. Coast Guard helicopters and jet fighters from the Alameda Navy Base fly along the shoreline, but cannot find the monster. Traffic helicopters from the local news stations join the search, as do some unauthorized drones controlled by H-1B visa holders and the Marina Green. While the attention is focused on the Palace of Fine Arts Lagoon, Joe Nathan and Colette drive his quiet 3-wheeler close to where Ayu had peered into the Paligator's cold reptilian eyes. They pass the old army garages next to the new construction site, home of the Presidio Mistrust's huge new project with Anvil Building Construction, and pause. Here in the Presidio Mistrust's continued efforts to destroy the natural world, construction workers dig large pits in the ground, divert the water and fill them in again to create new land bridges and further degrade the estuary and tidal marshlands. The workers had already left their giant excavators precariously positioned along the edges of the 18-foot trenches. Next to the construction site, across from Sports Basement, Joe Nathan sees a bright yellow boot. Through his binoculars, he can see that this boot is still attached to a knee, the rest of the body nowhere in sight. He notices slithering track marks along the sandy shores of the Crissy Marsh. He watches a young coyote trot towards the water. In a blink of an eye, Joe Nathan sees the coyote snatched up by the huge set of teeth of the giant mutated alligator. The coyote's tail swings from the monster's mouth like a pair of fuzzy dice from a cab driver's rearview mirror. "Release the Kraken," he shouts to Colette, and she drives the go-car closer to the beast. Joe Nathan dispatches a homemade dragonfly drone to buzz by the monster. The dragonfly distracts Paligator, and he releases the coyote tail from his bite. Quickly, Joe Nathan flies the dragonfly in and dispatches Sparky past Paligator's snout, smelling the putrid fish stink of cat food from what looks like a dog. The monster hauls its massive body towards Sparky. Joe Nathan lets the other dogs out to join Sparky. The puppy pack trots near the Paligator, but just out of reach, Joe Nathan controls them from his remote device and gives them a little speed. The reptilian monster closes in on the pack of animals packing heat. "Run, Sparky, run!" Colette cheers. Joe Nathan sends Sparky to the edge of the construction trench. The seething monster is right at Sparky's heels. Sparky sails into the open pit, his cat food dog team alongside him. As Paligator gobbles the explosive puppy pack with his deadly fangs, Joe Nathan pulls the fishing line. The Christmas cracker acts as a blasting cap and the explosives detonate. The pooches ignite. Paligator explodes with a ghastly boom. Duck heads, car window glass, pearls, styrofoam food containers, hand sanitizer bottles, body parts, and poisoned mercury-laden fish burst out from the gut of the mutant alligator. His tail lands under a coreopsis tree, later found by Io and prepared in a soup. Joe Nathan and Colette cheer. The monster is destroyed. The traffic reporters in their helicopters vie for position and are rewarded with new footage and the best news day since the fires began. The drone enthusiasts upload their videos to TikTok and become instant social media celebrities. Damien Hirsch and the Nutty Professor send for Paligator's remains. The Paligator prattle on lugubriousnextdoor.com is favorable. Day 6. Chrissy Marsh. On this quiet morning, California brown pelicans soar by the Golden Gate Bridge in harmonious formation. Black-crowned night herons return to their day roost at the Palace Lagoon. Marbled godwits plow their heavy bills through the mud of the Chrissy Field March, searching for mollusks. Great blue herons and egrets spearfish in the brackish marshland. In the Snowy Plover Wildlife Protection Area at the water's edge, out of view of the city's inhabitants, a nest shakes alive. Newly born mutant alligator hatchlings wriggle from their eggshells. Like Mendel's peas, they have inherited the worst traits from their mutated parents. Feasting on young sanderlings, the next generation is alive and hungry. That was Algae Gator 2, Paligator, the Palace of Fine Arts Monster by Dale Swimmer. And that was a blast to read. Pardon for any mispronunciations of people or shoe brands. Thank you, Dale, for giving me an opportunity to read your gory prose once again. This was fun. And that's it. Thank you.